The Trajectory of Didactic Literature by William Dean. Part 1. What didactic literature is not. In the crudest sense, didactic means something that teaches. But we are learning machines. We learn from everything, and every art teaches. Then should we just call every written thing didactic literature and be done with it? Fair enough. Thank you for watching. No. There are some types of work that, though they may be briefly touched on later, don't feature heavily in the path of didactic literature, a path which I'll loosely trace from antiquity to today. And they don't fall under the definition that I'll give to didactic. Histories are generally excluded from my reckoning of didactic literature because their primary purpose tends to be the recording of facts. Manuals and texts of direct instruction, as we know them today, would necessarily be excluded for the same reasons. Law books, constitutions, and treaties would likewise be excluded. All of these can have great examples of what I'll soon define as didactic literature, and there are surely examples of works whose primary purpose will fit my definition, but generally these kinds of works are dry and excluded. A proper definition of didactic literature would also exclude books that are arrogantly telling readers what to do and how to live life. Works of writing or film we might refer to as preachy might be wrongly referred to as didactic. They would actually be a failed didactic, or at best, a weakly done didactic. Finally excluded are those works that are incidentally didactic. In the same way that we always learn, we always teach our own perspectives, opinions, and knowledge. Whether the author intended to have an effect on a reader or not is beside the point. If the work is of any merit, it will have had some effect and a lesson will have been delivered. Those authors who don't intend to have an effect on the reader are thus having a blind, haphazard effect and are creating works that are incidentally didactic. So they're not under our definition of didactic literature. Part 2. What didactic literature is. Enough of what it's not. What is didactic literature? Students of English Lit should already be well familiar with the expression that sums it up nicely, to teach and delight. This elegant phrase contains much. The original Greek word didactikos connected learning with interest or wonder. They knew even then that we're in love with learning, obsessed with taking in more and more information about the world. Every sense we have is an information collection tool. Colors, sounds, heat, touch, anything we can do to gather more information. And our brains, powerful engines of regulation, strategy, vision. Part of the human condition is a mad thirst for understanding. The information gathering, the sensory devouring, is in every animal to the full capacity of every available sense, including humans, of course. However, imagination and the desire to process new information, the pinnacle of human biology, is easily beaten out of people by stress, grayed over by routine, or strangled mercilessly to a blue-faced gasping death by superstition and doctrine. In the term didactikos, the Greeks recognized that learning must come with great pleasure, and that an intuitive thirst would then follow. The Greek philosopher Plutarch, from 46 to 120 Common Era, said, "The mind is not a vessel to be filled, but a fire to be kindled." Except he said it in Greek. Didactic literature is a literature that hits the sweet spot between learning and pleasure. This could refer to works of fiction or art that have inherently clear messages, draw heavy attention to sciences, or arouse a conscious pleasure in learning itself. It's something that ignites the fire of the mind when it succeeds, and that tells you what to do, or gives you snake oil when it fails. The Greeks had as many problems with these teachers of bullshit as we do. Remember Socrates and the hemlock? He didn't drink that shit for robbing a bank. Some authors who wrote purposefully didactic works in antiquity include Homer in 8th century BCE, who of course wrote the Iliad and the Odyssey, Virgil in 19 BCE, who wrote the Aeneid, and Ovid in 18 CE, who wrote Metamorphoses. This is just to name a few among many, many writers and thinkers who wanted to give both pleasure and enlightenment. Many religious scriptures are didactic too, particularly among those we wouldn't first class as law, history, or wish fulfillment. To zoom in more tightly, the primary teaching style of Jesus was the telling of didactic parables, though they were light in the narrative sense, making them weakly didactic. Moreover, the life of Jesus, as written by 4 of his alleged students, is a didactic and compelling narrative. Here we zoom out. To tell the full story of didactic literature would be to tell the whole story of literature. Suffice it to say that there are 3 trends that have remained strong from ancient times to today. We're always gratifying the senses with art and experience. We're always learning more and unpeeling this mad onion-skinned existence we found ourselves in. Didacticism has always been a subject of importance, and there's always been a discussion on how to satisfy the combination of these two wonderfully human drives, to learn and to love. Part 3. Mass Media. If the concept of teach and delight has always been around, and it's always been important, then why do we tend to associate didactic literature with the last 500 years? Prior to the 1400s, didactic works were frequently works of art first, and didactic morals or lessons were a predictable or expected element. Things started changing about 500 years ago in a drastic way, for all of humanity. At first, the changes came in trickles, but even if subtly felt, they were profound changes, with implications that we're still only at the beginnings of today. These changes broke down existing didactic trends, including the very topics to be didactic about, and opened a niche for new kinds of didactic materials. The first of these major changes was in 1440 when Johann Gutenberg developed a printing press with movable type. In terms of a human lifetime, it wasn't really quick to catch on, but on a historical scale, a fire had started that could never be stopped. What were the first effects? More books. It seems obvious, but it's at the heart of everything that follows. More books means more simultaneous readers. More simultaneous readers means more people who simultaneously care about the same things, think about the same things, are afraid of or are passionate about the same things. It's the discovery of mass media. This was a truly unifying feat, and it's as important a dividing point in cultural epochs as that between the raw and the cooked. These important events and people that follow are important in their own right for the survey of didacticism and the deterioration of didactic objectives, but everything after the 1400s, everything, owes a serious debt of gratitude to the printing press. Part 4. Shit Gets Real. On the religious front, Martin Luther published his 95 Theses in 1517, a proclamation against the Roman Catholic Church in general, and most famously, the Church's practice of indulgences, the selling of pardons, forgiveness, and salvation. His protest against the Church's practices earned him excommunication, but his legacy is Protestantism, the umbrella under which some of the world's most populated religions stand. His legacy is the right to protest, the right to think for oneself and interpret for oneself, the ability to question and undermine not just the Roman Catholic Church, but religion and indoctrination in general. If one can question, indoctrinated superstition will necessarily fall to the wayside, even if the investigator has no such desire. In 1543, shortly before his death, Nicholas Copernicus revealed to us all the completely non-intuitive and controversial fact that the earth is in motion about the sun. Man was no longer the center of existence. This made a lot of people uncomfortable, but it wouldn't get out of hand for another 50 years or so with Galileo Galilei, who advanced heliocentric theory and was punished to house arrest for heresy. Isaac Newton, whose giant shoulders carry many of today's great scientists, unlocked the grand workings of our solar system. He pushed science into a new era. Starting with the observation of a falling apple while in sight of the moon, he worked out the laws of gravity, charted the paths of the planets. Then when asked why the orbits had the shape they did, he invented calculus to solve the problem. He invented calculus. Wasn't even 25 yet. This was unlocked by literacy, not by magic, even though he was into magic too. The most profound result of the discoveries of Copernicus, Galileo, and Newton is that God is not necessary to keep the universe running. The universe operates by self-maintaining laws. These men and countless other men and women of the period helped to ignite the scientific revolution and freed us from the terror of shadows flickering on cave walls.